welcome to the Board Game Network. This is James. I'm going to be explaining how to play this game called Specter Ops. This game here is a hide and seek game, one where one person's the bad guy and everybody else is seeking them, much like Escape from Osprey games or Scotland Yard, a longtime favorite of mine. So one person is the agent and everybody else is hunters. Now this setup that I'm going to explain to you is for 3 players, and then at the end I'll go over the 4 and 5 player rules. The game plays 2 to 5, and for 2 players you're just playing 4, like you have 4 people playing. It plays in 1 to 2 hours, and here's the setup here. You set your board out, you put your car token here on K17. There's a grid here on the board and it's probably hard to see. It'd be a lot easier if this was printed, if these grid coordinates were printed in white, just flat white. But they get kind of dark here and you have to kind of see the gloss on them to even read these on the dark parts of the board, which looks really cool, but it's hard to look at during the game and see unless you got really good lighting. And so you're trying to look at the board, but you're trying to act like you're not really looking at the board in the place you're looking at it. So it's hard to do. You figure out who the agent's going to be, and the agent gets to go through this deck of cards and pick out 3 cards. And so there's several cards to pick, and these are just things you can do during the game. And there's 4 of them that are specific to a specific agent. So you cannot use a different agent's card, but you can use yours or you can use the other ones, up to 3 total, and they all have a charge on them, and that tells you how many times you can play them during the game. So this one here has 2 little red circles on it, which means you can use it twice. So you're going to take 3 of those. You're going to put those face down because you don't want the hunters to find out which ones you have, so you're going to have those off to the side face down. The hunters are going to put their figures in this card, and that is represented by the token on the board. So if they're in the car, then they're in the car. If they get out of the car, then they're not in the car. Okay, and then they also have these cards, and so there's 4 hunters that they can pick from, and there's 4 agents that the agent can pick from. The agent keeps his card face down so the hunters don't know which one he's playing, and you're going to put the other ones in the box. They all come with plastic figures that match the hunter and the agents. So you should not know who the agent is to start the game, but the hunters are face up, and so they've got their figures also. So you're going to pick out 2 of them, and they all have special abilities, the agents and the hunters, so you want to read through them and pick out ones that you like or will work together well. You're going to roll dice to figure out the objectives. You have a pad of paper here that matches the gridding on the board here. There's a bunch of squares here with 1s on them, and then the die. And so when you roll that die, you're going to say, well, for objective 1, I got a 2, which tells me you're going to look for the 1 and then the 2 in the die. And then that's going to be grid coordinate C17. And then there's some 2s and some 3s and some 4s. So you're going to roll this 4 times. You're going to set these objective tokens out here wherever you roll on here. And the blue side is going to be face up. The agent is the first player to go, and then the hunters go, and the hunters get to decide what order they want to play in. The objective for the agent is to tag 3 of the 4 objectives and exit the map. So there are 3 white arrows where the agent can exit the map safely. And he comes in over here at N1, which is right here by the center arrow. And he needs to come tag 3 of these 4 and then exit one of the arrows. The agent gets to move 0 to 4 spaces, And he can move orthogonal or diagonal. So, and he's not going to be on the board. He's just going to write his turns on the sheet here. So he's starting at N1 and then space 1, he's going to write where he moved to, and then write where he moves to. And you can use this. You could draw a line here and arrows or whatever, however you want to do this, but you don't want the hunters to see your sheet of paper. So if he was on the board here, let's just throw one out here. If he was on the board here, he could move one space that way, or he could move diagonal also. So orthogonal or diagonal up to 4 spaces. You cannot move into structure squares, so any of them that have things on those squares, you can't move into those squares. There is this marker that's called the last scene marker, and if there are hunters out here and the agent runs across their line of sight, but does not stop in their line of sight, which I'll explain where that's at in a little bit, then you leave this last scene marker out there. So let's say the agent was over here and then he ran across here and there was a hunter there. So he would put the last scene marker there. The hunter can see down this aisleway or this roadway on the map. And so that would be the last square that the hunter could see the agent in before he disappeared, and so that marker would come down there. And you can also put the figure on that if you wish to, but that does show who the agent is at that point. So you can know at that point what the agent's special ability is. He would flip his card up. But that is if he stops in line of sight. If he does not stop in line of sight, he leaves the last scene marker. If he does stop in line of sight, he's going to put his figure down, and then he's going to flip his card up to show what figure he is. The equipment cards that we picked out, the 3 equipment cards, those can be used anytime on your turn that they apply, and you can only use them as many times as there are charges on them. To complete a mission objective, you have to start your turn adjacent to, orthogonal or diagonal, one of the objectives. So you can't just run by it on your turn. You have to start the turn adjacent to it. And then you flip the token face up or the red side up, and then you take your turn and move away. Now you wouldn't have your figure on the board normally unless you're within line of sight. So you just have to know that you are next to it, and then you tell the hunters that you're next to it by flipping it over, and then you take off. And they immediately know that you are on one of those squares adjacent. To win the game for the agent, you have to tag 3 of the 4 objectives. You have to exit the map by the end of turn 40. There are 40 spaces on here, so you get 40 turns before the game is over. And you cannot exit out of a space if there's a hunter on it. You can't move through a hunter at any time. You have to go around them, and you can't stop on them or move through them. And you have to have at least 1 hit point left. Each agent has 4 hit points to start with. And so he's going to mark these off, or the hunter gets to shoot at the agent, and so the agent loses hit points. So he's got 4 hit points. So he has to make it off with at least 1 hit point to win. The objective for the hunters is simply to stop the agent from completing his mission. The hunters also can move from 0 to 4 spaces, orthogonal or diagonal, and they cannot move on structures either. They start inside the vehicle at the beginning of the game, and the vehicle can move 0 to 10 spaces, but to move the vehicle has to stay on the roads, and the roads are separated by dotted lines. Here's a dotted line here, and then there are two coordinates on either side of that dotted line. So they would have, the car has to stay on the road. So on either side of that road, the dotted line. And if a hunter gets on or off, that ends the hunter's turn. Turns over, and the car can only move 10 spaces maximum for the whole turn. So if there's 2 hunters on there, one hunter could move 5 spaces and then jump off, and then the other hunter would be limited to moving it 5 more spaces for a total of 10 before the other hunter jumped off or could stay on. If you are in the car, you cannot attack from within the car. You cannot shoot from within the car, and the hunters cannot be stunned within the car. Stunning is not something in the regular rule books, but it's a special ability of one of the agents, and it stops them from attacking for the turn. They're confused and they can only move 2 spaces, something like that. The line of sight is only checked at the end of a move when the hunters are moving. So let's say that this agent is standing here and this hunter runs by. Now, line of sight for one of the roads is you can see all the way up and down the road. So if this hunter was here, he could see all the way up this column and all the way up the column next to it down this road. And you can only do line of sight on your row or your column unless you're on a road. So if you're back here in one of these, you're not on the road, you can only follow your column or your row. As far as it goes, the structure is going to block line of sight. So if this hunter runs past this row, and this agent is standing there, even though the piece is not going to be on the board, but if he was standing hidden there, then this hunter would not see the agent, because the line of sight only works at the end of the hunter's turn. So when the hunter stops, the agent's going to say all clear if he's not in line of sight, or he's going to put his piece on the board if he is within line of sight. And if he is within line of sight and becomes visible, then the hunters can roll a dice, and they have to equal or exceed the number of spaces from the agent. So if he's 3 spaces away, 1, 2, 3, even diagonal, then he would have to roll a 3 or higher. Now a 1 always fails, and if he's standing on the same space as the hunter, the hunter is on the same space as the agent, then it's an automatic success. And if you succeed at hitting, then the agent loses 1 hit point, marks that off his sheet. The vehicle here has a motion sensor, which is marked out here on the board. And for the motion sensor to work, the hunter must start his turn on the vehicle and must use the whole action, his whole turn, doing the motion sensor ability. And so the hunter would say, I'm going to use the motion sensor. And then the agent would have to say which direction he was from the motion sensor right here. And most of the time it's going to be northeast, northwest, southeast, or southwest. The only time it's north, south, east, or west, and it's not based on this, it's based on the car, from where the car is at. The only time it's going to be north, south, east, and west is if it's exactly down the row or the column. Otherwise it's going to be at an angle, and so it's going to be northeast, northwest. There is no north, northeast, or south, southwest. And if the agent moved 2 spaces or less on the previous turn, then he announces that no motion has been detected. So if he's moving slowly, the motion sensor doesn't work. The motion sensor has a limit of 1 use per turn, and the vehicle cannot be moved in the round that the motion sensor is used. If a if a hunter has been stunned, you place a stun marker out there, which is one of these markers. They cannot attack or use their abilities. They can move up to 2 spaces. And you remove the marker at the end of the hunter's turn. Now, that's all the rules there is to Specter Ops. For a 4-player game, here are the slight adjustments. The objectives are hidden. They're not placed on the board. So you still have 1 agent, but now you have 3 hunters instead of 2 hunters. So to offset that, to make it easier for the agent, since the hunters have the additional advantage of another player, is the objectives are no longer known where they're at on the board. So the hunters have a general idea, because they're always going to be in the same quadrant based on where you roll them, but they're just not going to be marked. The vehicle starts in K23, which is right here, which is a little bit farther away. The agent gets 5 equipment cards instead of 3. The agent gets 6 hit points instead of 4. And H1 right here is an additional space that can be escaped from. So not just the 3, but now it becomes 4 spaces. For a 5-player game, you also have the hidden objectives. The vehicle starts on K23. You still have the H1 as an additional escape route. But in a 5-player game, 1 player is a traitor. And these cards are handed out to each player by the agent. And so one of them is red and is a secret agent. So the traitor, his line of sight is actually optional. So the agent knows who the traitor is. So if the agent runs by the traitor, or the traitor is in line of sight of the agent can choose not to declare his line of sight and not become visible. If the hunter has to pretend like he's fighting the agent. So if the hunter shoots, then the agent pretends like he's taking hits from the double agent. Revealed information on the agent can be false if the traitor is involved. So if the traitor is doing something, then the agent can give false information unless there's somebody else involved. So if there's two people in the car and one of them's the traitor, then obviously you can choose whether line of sight is for the traitor, but the other person's there too, so you can't falsify the line of sight at that point. The motion sensor information, it can be false if there's only the traitor in the vehicle, but if there's a non-traitor in the vehicle, then it has to be truthful. And the hunters can revoke vehicle privileges to one of the hunters each turn. At the start of the turn, they just take a vote and say, yeah, we're not going to let Bill use the vehicle this turn, including the motion sensor, and then he can't use it. So that would obviously be if they suspect somebody as being the traitor. If the traitor becomes known, or the traitor can voluntarily make himself known, he hides and becomes an agent. Now he cannot complete objectives, but he has to escape from the board. He is given 2 equipment cards, and for the agent to win, 3 of the 4 objectives must be completed. Both agents must exit with at least 1 hit point. Or if the traitor did not become revealed during the game, then only the agent has to escape. And they have to do it by round 40. So that's the 5-player rules. And again, I said at the beginning, if you're playing 2 players, you've got 1 agent, and then the other agent gets 2 hunters. So you're playing a 3-player game essentially with 2 players. So that's how you play Specter Ops. One of those hidden find the person type games. And make sure you tune into all of the videos here at the Board Game Network, and watch out for any giveaways we're doing, and subscribe to the YouTube channel.